Namaste, welcome friends to our Virat Hindustan Sangam social media channels and to our show Words of Wisdom Gyan Ganga, which we have every Sunday at 8 p.m. with Dr. Subramaniam Swamy. Today is our episode number 179, and we have a discussion in the next 40 to 45 minutes, which will go on on a new book written by Miss Namrata Kohli. The name of the book is Culture During Crisis. The book was released by Dr. Swamy on Friday at a very impressive ceremony in Delhi, and we are here to discuss this new book. I will briefly tell you about the author. The writer, author, journalist Namrata Kohli has been associated with several national and international media in the past 2 decades. A name to reckon within the journalism industry. Her articles across top rated media groups such as Business Standard, Network 18, Hindustan Times, the Times of India, Economic Times are extremely well received. Namrata studied English literature at the University of Delhi and mass communication at IIMC New Delhi, after which she did an executive course from ISB, the Indian School of Business at Hyderabad. Since November 2021, Namrata has been working with the Ministry of Culture as an advisory capacity and is currently leading projects which is known as DDR, Digital District Repository, as content advisor under the Azadi Ki Amrit Mahotsav AKAM with CCRT, Center for Cultural Resources and Training in the Ministry of Culture, Government of India. DDR is a path-breaking initiative of Government of India to discover and document stories of people, events and places linked to the freedom struggle in India at the micro level of the district. In short, this is an attempt to present the history of India by Indians through the Indians' perspective. A great believer in the power of culture and heritage of India, Namrata's latest book is Culture During Crisis. Is available on Amazon and Flipkart. In 2020, she authored a book called Corona Positives, showing the upside of the pandemic. While on a similar theme, she also collaborated with Goethe and Max Muller New Delhi for a global project titled Lockdown Lessons. We welcome her to our show, and as you all know, that Virat Hindustan Sangam under Dr. Swamy has been in the forefront on various issues and especially on culture, history, Sanskrit, and numerous other aspects. So, this book is in the right direction. So, we have Namrata Kohli with us, and in the next half an hour or 40 minutes, we will be discussing on this book. I thank my co host Ramesh Swamy and Dr. Arvind Chaturvedi for being with us on this show, and our technical team led by Ashish Shetty, Tejas Navalgul, Ishwar Iyer, Gadgi Rakesh, Swaminathan, Vishal Mehta, and Ajesh Nair for their support to put this weekly program together. With these words, it is over to Dr. Subramaniam Swamy to initiate this discussion on this book, and Namrita will tell us everything about the book. Over to Dr. Swamy. Thank you.
Yes, since we have now determined we will terminate at 8:45, so I'll be as brief as I can. This is the book. It's come out very nicely in terms of print and so on. It's won't take. It's not one of those bulky stuff where you get put off. You can read it. It's easily available from Amazon. Uh, I found one thing fascinating that she, I mean, it sort of summarizes the some of the things that we are doing. She has observed that educated Indians prefer avocado to amla, olive oil to desi ghee, guitar to sitar, and Spanish to Sanskrit. Now, in a sense, the educated Indians are summed up that while everybody knows that the Indian alternative is far superior, but because of this Europeanization that has been in the past, this has happened. Now, her whole idea seems to be that patriotic Indians should brand and position our culture correctly. That is, the culture that we have, we are learning it through books in English that was written during the British period. They were written by tutees of the Britishers. And so, therefore, she wants now to see that we go back to the original sources, base it on Sanskrit, and then come out with what our real past is. And that's what we want to learn from her. We have in our own the organization we have been propagating five things from day one. One is to define who we are, because the British have created so much confusion in our history books, and the tutees of the British have done it continuously afterwards. Aryans, Dravidians are nonsensical because there's no difference according to the DNA studies that have come out. But still, in the Western universities, this is being propagated. So she should know that we, in also from the angle of history, we are very aware of what she's advocated in her book. Now, the question of varna and caste, what is the real meaning of it? This is another thing that we have been saying, that varna, according to Lord Krishna, is a guna. That is, if you are a Jnani, Tyagi, and Sasi, then you qualify to be a Brahmin. Or if you are a valorous fighter, you become a Kshatriya. But there's no such thing as birth-based caste or varna. And that has to be put across so that we are all one people. If our DNA is the same, how can you have any distinctions on the basis of birth? Then the question of correct history. And her project with if I'm correct, our project with the Ministry of Culture is to research Indian history and see it as by Indians and through Indian perspective. So this is also something that we have somewhat great similarity. And we recognize that Sanskrit is now the language of the future, not the language of the past. It's not a heritage that we have to extol it. But in artificial intelligence, now there have been researches which have been coming out which says that for storing knowledge in computer, in the artificial, to enable artificial intelligence, Sanskrit is the best language because its script there's no ambiguity and there is no PUT put and BUT but. The computer doesn't get in voice recording confused by that. So this is another thing, and we have also found that Sanskrit is now being used here and there in the Western world. For instance, in St. James School for children of ages of 6 to 11, who are made in the morning to recite Sanskrit shlokas, and that group of children actually came before when Charles III was being crowned recently. They also recited Sanskrit shloka in his coronation. And this is a St. James School, which you can access by going to Google. And finally, economic policy, in which we have advocated that spiritual advancement should accompany material prosperity. It's not just, you just don't chase or you just don't go for material prosperity. So it is that same framework. We are working in different compartments, but not differently. We will hope her future research is exchanged with us, and she comes in the future also when she has made some major research projects completed, and therefore we welcome her. And please speak freely. We are all ordinary people. We are not experts in your field, and this is not a seminar of that kind. We want to learn. We want to absorb what you are saying, and therefore speak freely. And it's the time is all yours. If you speak for say till from up to late 35. Then some questions can also come from our panelists, but it's entirely up to you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Subramaniam Swamy, for that very nice background that you set. And thank you for launching my book. I couldn't have asked for a better person than you to have launched it, because I think not just me, but very many people would consider you India's foremost culture crusader. There are issues which you have taken up, and not just taken up, but taken them to the logical conclusion, and the world is aware of it. So it's really a privilege to be on your show, and thank you for this platform. So, briefly, if I start with why I wrote that book, and before that, when I wrote this book, because I think that was really important in before coming to the whys of it, the when of it. So the COVID-19 pandemic was the watershed moment in the history of mankind, and certainly in our lifetimes. And it was a period which gave us something which we hadn't gotten before, and that was time. And we were locked down. And when you can't go outside, you tend to go inside. So it was a time to deep dive into age old wisdom, traditional practices, and really understand the worth and the meaning of it. So for the first time, lot of Indians, they would listen to Mamurat. Of course, a lot of people must be following it. But Haldi Doodh, Desi Kada, they kind of bailed us, many of us, out of the health issues which COVID kind of challenged us with. And we realized that the age-old time-tested wisdom, adopting Ayurvedic way of life, or there were a lot of these oil pulling techniques which culture kind of helped us during the crisis, or just the belief in spirituality. There were people who were chanting Hanuman Chalisa on a daily basis, and culture helped us during the crisis. But then, while culture helped us during the crisis, I also thought that culture itself was on crisis. And COVID-19 pandemic was also a time when many of us realized that all those myths about wealth, power, position, they kind of got demolished, simply because we were as good as our community. So we may have the best of material possessions, property, prime addresses, uh, gold, jewelry, whatever, but nothing really helped us except for perhaps goodwill with others. So this call of community, that we are as good as a society, because if there was one case of virus in the school, then the entire school community was at risk. If there was one case of virus in the gated community or the society where one was living, everyone was at risk. So it just kind of became very evident that we are as good as a society. So I think, as an obligation, as a responsibility, I thought one must document the high points of one's culture. There are all kinds of things that are there in our heritage, but some things which we can be really proud of. And most unfortunately, because we have had a very checkered past, we've had acrimonious defeats, and history has been very irresponsibly written. So it was also important to do the right kind of storytelling. And when I say storytelling, I'm not saying as a figment of one's imagination. They've been stories kind of sway us. They can change our world. They can change politics, policies, and everything. They can become a tool that a country can use. So it was very important to tell India's story from the Indian lens. So, for instance, during the second wave, and it was a very unfortunate wave when so many Indians, so many people globally lost their lives. The New York Times, they were very quick to comment on India's failures. I mean, no nation in the world can provide for one bed in the hospital for every countryman, and it was a very unprecedented scenario. So that kind of made it uh, those kind of situations were very important to it was very important to set the record straight and set the image straight for the country. So when I say storytelling, there can be different ways in which people can help. So people threw their kitchens open, they shared their food, they shared their wealth. uh, time, skills, money. There are various ways in which you can help the society. And I thought, as a journalist, this is the only skill that I know. So since I have access to some people who are, sort of, I would say, custodians of culture, if I may put it that way, it became important to understand from them uh, where why our culture was in crisis and what is so good about it. What are the things that need to be retained? So, what was the evidence of the fact that the culture was in crisis? Today, if you spend, say, 10 minutes on Netflix or any OTT channel, the preeminent culture that you are negotiating with is the gali culture. There are volley of abusive words which can offend anybody's sensibilities. Or if you listen to music on primetime radio and hear the quality of songs, and every second song has references to cocaine, to alcohol. I mean, you are what you eat. Don't nutritionists tell the children? So you become what you hear. Extending that same thought, I would say if the quality of content that you're constantly being fed on is very low level, then imagine what would be the takeaway of the young impressionable minds. If you look at the language crisis, I mean, look at the state of Hindi, for instance. I find parents very proudly declaring, हमारे बच्चे को तो हिंदी नहीं आती. Yeah, the principal of a leading public school in Delhi, she found it increasingly difficult to fill up the Sanskrit section while she had to create half a dozen for other languages. And when I said Spanish over Sanskrit, it is just an alliteration, SNS, but I basically refer to everything from French, German, Sanskrit, and the whole. If you can do a smattering of these European languages, it's like you have arrived, because English is no more considered in that smattering list. It is a must have, it's a mandatory. We unfortunately have come to a state where, I mean, people like me also, we think in English because we've been educated in English medium schools. But then 75 years of India's independence, it's never too late to change the way things are. And as you said rightly in your address on my book launch event, that Sanskrit must become mandatory. It's a must for everyone to know Sanskrit so that we can appreciate our own religious texts, our literature, and these are and understand them not just for our religion, but I think life skills. Or after the language crisis, I would also like to talk about the music crisis. If you look at how the quality of music is deteriorating, and we have this incredible thing in India, the traditional folk songs or the classical Indian music, which has the ability to generate so much energy, and it has potential to awaken the energy points in our body and take us to a higher level of consciousness. Now that is being played to empty halls, and the legacy of artists don't want to continue with that legacy. So today, whereas a Korean pop, for instance, people are willing to pay, and I'm talking of educated elite and the teenage kids, they are willing to pay anything from 5,000 to even 25,000 in a recent concert which was held in the capital city. So today, a guitar wins over a sitar, a ballet over Kathak, a Spanish over Sanskrit. These are all choices that we Indians are making on a daily basis. Same way, the native instruments such as the veena, the bansuri, or take the guitar, which is being reduced to a mere tune on the synthesizer palette. It's just a sound, and when a native instrument becomes a sound thanks to technology, it becomes convenient, yes, but it does a lot of harm to the person playing that particular instrument. And very soon, and I hear it from music teachers and musicians, that similar will be the fate of sitar, because neither the parents want to teach their children how to play a sitar. They would any day go for a guitar, which is much cheaper, which makes you look very cool if you are uploading a few videos playing it on social media, which is also supposedly having far more takers, uh, and it's become aspirational. Whereas the desi instruments, the indigenous or whatever down market. These are words which people generally use in a very derogatory way, and it's very unfortunate. But then these uh, these will kill an entire generation of artists practicing them. And ditto for Banarsi and Kanjivaram, because the story is getting hijacked by China. I mean, if we allow this to happen and don't endorse this stuff, the handicraft, the handwoven, then imagine the fate of the industry, the craft sort of legacy of the country, the heritage of India. So these are things which I thought were points to ponder upon. But then I thought that maybe I was overthinking, maybe I was being conservative, maybe I was not moving with the times, and I thought I'll check my hypothesis by speaking with a few people. And I happened to, get a viewpoint from the former Vice President of India, Shri Venkaiah Naidu ji, and he said something similar. He says that the foreign medium has made our children practically foreigners in our own land, and that I think is the greatest tragedy of the existing system. If you don't use a language, you lose a language. Now, Dr. Swamy, exactly the same point about the legacy of language is something which your organization and you have been relentlessly working on promoting Sanskrit, which I think is a very, very important thing. Uh, so we have already lost, and every week we are losing our dialects, our local, languages, and there has to be some effort for the damage. We already have, there are some positive things happening too. For example, Google Duo this year itself, I think in the month of May or April, has introduced Sanskrit and 19 regional languages. So that's where technology can bridge the gap, and that's where things can. Because I remember my son who was struggling to find the Hindi equivalent of a Sanskrit word and could not find it on Google Duo. Suddenly, was very pleasantly surprised when it did introduce, Google Duo did introduce that one particular language. So I think these are all very good changes which are happening over time. And um and then I also spoke to Shiriji Arvind Singh Mewar, who's the 76th custodian of the House of Mewar. And he also said something about heritage being our identity, being our USP. We have to continuously build on it. We cannot allow it to to be diluted or dissolve or deface it. Then we are simply losing ourselves. You take pride in your roots. It's the only thing you have, and you simply cannot allow your identity to go away. If societies do not preserve and respect their heritage, they become faceless, homogeneous, and may have to search afresh for their identity. Or Jaya Jetli ma'am, who said that we are very casual about our own culture, and she's a lady who has been raised in Japan, Burma, studied in USA, and uh, you know, but her heart beats for India. And she said they, these foreigners, they find these stories extremely unique and exotic, the cultural stories that societies like ours have, which industrial societies like them don't have. So the West seems to value it far more than the Indians themselves. Or and then in my interact course of interaction, Dr. Swamy, I found that there were some people who kind of surprised me with what they said. So one startling comment, it came from a designer, Padma Bhushan, Mr. Rajiv Sethi, and he said that the more people are illiterate, the more literate they are about crafts. But when they don't read about foreign books, and they're far more open-minded, they know about different types of art and culture. And he said, and I quote, the worst of the lot who close their minds to everything are the educated, uneducated, the pade likhe gawar, as we put it in colloquial way. So, and he said that bana Hastinapur, ungli panch panch, all are in my hand, which is to say that India is still the most hand-skilled nation in the world of rapidly de-skilling communities. And how lucky we are that we have this culture of haath ka kaam, but then how unlucky we are not to be able to value it. So, like that, I was also very fortunate to speak with Sadhguru Jagi Vasudev ji, who said that India is the land of spirituality and seekers, and there's no other culture in the world where there's a science and a logic and a spiritual, ethos behind everything we do, from the way we stand to the way we pray to the way we eat to the way we perform our rituals. In everything, it's just that today's curious minds have lots of questions and there is nobody to answer them. So people feel that this is all useless and this is all crap. But when you have people like you or people like other culture crusaders, answering them, then I think a lot in the current generation becomes convinced. So what I really found was this, that 75 years ago, British, they left us, but only politically. But we are not really free in our minds, we still we have disinterest in everything Indian and obsession with everything Western. And I would extend that to say beyond Western, I mean everything non-Indian, because today's teenager, average metro teenager, is far more interested in a Japanese anime or a Harry Potter than a Jataka Tale, or they somehow it doesn't maybe excite them enough, or a Korean pop. So it's also a lot of Asian stuff. Anything non-Indian is great, and it's very degrading for a lot of children to be admitting that they have even listened to a Hindi song. Forget about classical Indian music, but that's really the culture of the day, which I documented it through my book. $45 trillion. That is the latest figure that the Shashi Tharoor book of British imperialism gives. But then that was just the financial drain, the draining away of culture of the country, and the the self confidence that is immeasurable. But I think it's high time we did something about a cultural revival. And I think we are already, the government is already doing it. People like you, visionaries like you, through your organization, have been doing a lot. We are now a mature democracy. We are 75 years old. Even though as a culture, we are several thousands years old. I think really, I would, at the end, I'll say that exposure to other cultures is necessary. It's really good to know different languages, to buy international art, display them, to learn performing arts from different parts of the country. But I think after learning your own, because time is finite, things are infinite. It cannot be at the cost of learning one's own. That's my humble submission. Because when we become an imitation of the West, we are only subtracting our own brand equity. Because what is really our culture? It is our brand, and we should just strive to become the best version of ourselves. Mediocrity in imitation or excellence in originality. I think that is the choice we will all have to make. Over to you, Dr. Swami.
Well, that's in this short time you have beautifully concise presentation of your works, and I hope you continue on it. And I personally think that where you are positioned now is a very good place for moving it. We need to collect people who are accomplished, who know English language too, and are able to debate with foreigners, because the foreigners are still at it. They become Indian experts, and then they use their scholarship methods to see that the right kind of people come, and anyone who falls out of line is not acceptable, or is run down like the communists used to do with intellectuals in India. So I think we need to create a new sort of school of thought. And I saw the other day I had gone to release a book of Rajiv Malhotra, where he talked about. I think he talked about snakes in Ganges. As he said, Ganges is pure, but snakes have been introduced into it. And my God, the man's knowledge is tremendous. But the when the our government was formed, that is the BJP government, I had suggested that he should be made chairman of a history revision committee, A history revision committee was made, but the entire bureaucracy found all kinds of loopholes that he was not an Indian citizen, blah blah, etc. And he got disgusted because he it takes time away from his research, and he still continued doing a lot of research. So that work of writing a new textbook for children has still not been completed after 8-9 years, and because the bureaucracy have taken complete control
Yeah,
of
that,
the.
yeah,
Uh,
that was a very big expectation from the government, and it's a bit of a letdown that it hasn't happened. But now that I'm also working with the government of India, I can
yeah,
just
yeah.
briefly tell you about, it's maybe thing too little happening too late, perhaps. That's my personal assessment, because I'm also an outsider insider, so I can air my views on that. But the DDR project, Digital District Repository, is all about भारत की कहानी भारतीयों की ज़बानी. So this thing about the freedom struggle being just about few fighters, few celebrated people, and I'm not going to take names, but everybody knows the freedom struggle was fought by in every nook and the cranny of the country, and somehow it did not get represented at the micro level, at the level of district. So at CCRT, since we have a resource personnel virtually in every district of the country, from Sangli in Maharashtra to Kozhikode in Kerala to Kottayam in Tamil Nadu, we have
I think we have lost her on the long run.
Are the other panelists able to hear?
I can
No.
hear, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Carry
Yeah, we
on.
lost you briefly.
Yeah.
I see.
To
Okay.
continue, you are referring to that person from Sangli
DDR.
and Kozhikode. Can you just start after that?
From Maharashtra
Yeah, yeah.
to Kozhikode. Kozhikode. It's not Kozhikode, but Kozhikode.
Very good. All right, I stand corrected. So, so this micro level data, because frankly, if we don't know where we are coming from, then we don't know where we are going. And if we don't know where we are going, then we are probably going wrong. So, a man without the appreciation of his past heritage and history is really like a tree without roots, and that is not going to go very far. So we thought the history is a foundation. It's not like a relic which can be just abandoned and forgotten. And also because we were constantly told, and even I find it even till date, as you rightly said, the history books have not been corrected. You're constantly told you were plundered, you were conquered, you were defeated. Now, if there's so much negativity about our history, why would we like to remember it? Forget about reclaiming it also. So we need to build those stories of pride, of inspiration, which kind of make the current generation want to give references to it. And I find even as we are editing those stories, and we have already released some 300 of them, we find that this thing about khaddar, using the charkha. Now, it wasn't that it was the most comfortable garment, or there was nothing better than this before, or there will be anything better than that after. But it was really the spirit with which it was happening, and the glue, the nationalism, and the patriotism was another level. So people have done a lot during the 190 years of colonial struggle, and it has not been captured. But now that we are getting our CCRT resource personnel to personally visit these homes, it's a journey. It's not about just their byline appearing on the website and that's it. It's a journey, because when they share the pictures, they are showing how these people are sharing the tamra patra which was gifted to them, the pension slips, the documents, and there's a sense of recognition just there, even as they're sharing that information. So I think a lot of events which have gone unnoticed are also getting documented, and that's briefly what the
Yeah.
this DDR project is all about.
I'll make one short comment, then hand it over to Jagdish to give ask other of our panelists to participate. You see, when I explain to the audiences, well, I've been doing this for the last 20 years, they are all, mesmerized by the idea that we fought the Islamic forces for 6 centuries and finally defeated them. It was a formal defeat in 1775 in Maharashtra when the Peshwas finally finished Aurangzeb's army. But you don't find this anywhere in the book. You'll find it in Western books, but you will not find it in Indian textbooks. Similarly, the British, within, as you said, they came in as traders and all that, but Queen Victoria took over only in 1857 after Rani Jhansi and the first, as we call it, as the first war of independence, 1857. That left every year, every decade, you can see some uprising, whether the sadhus started it, Vande Mataram came, then Aurobindo came, and then of course thinkers came like Savarkar and then Gandhi. And so India has never allowed the invaders in our country to rest in peace. We kept challenging them. That's the way we know to put it across. Whereas in other countries, they Australia, they wiped out everybody. In the United States, they wiped out everybody, and it became a new country, and a a new race that took over, and Americans, the Europeans, and so on took over the United States. So I think the main problem is not only the factual part, but to motivate them to know that you have been a fighter. And last comment I would make is that in when I was fighting the emergency, people told me emergency is for educated people. Or to fight emergency, the country must be educated. The illiterates can never understand democracy and so on. But when the results came out, the most educated part of India, that is the four southern states, voted for Indira Gandhi, and the most uneducated part, the north, UP, Bihar, and all, they wiped out Mrs. Gandhi completely. And in fact, even in UP, they defeated her and her son in their own constituency, which is unthinkable for in any other intellectual thing. So that's why I'm saying that the hope in India is there, but we need scholars like you to keep hammering, 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 and not be despondent ever. Okay, Jagdish.
Yeah, madam, going through your book, I see very
Yes.
interesting chapters. So I just want you to tell our viewers what is this sari, not sorry? SARI, sari, not sorry. Can you enlighten our viewers on something on this chapter because it is interesting the title of the contents of the chapter. Sari,
Yes.
Yeah,
not
sure.
sorry. Could you just tell our
Yeah.
viewers?
So this is actually a takeoff from a recent episode which happened in the capital city where a lady was not allowed. She was barred from entering this upscale restaurant slash lounge bar because she was dressed in a sari, and it was supposed to be inappropriate garment or something like that. So the thing is that it's been endorsed by foreigners and they really love it. Why do Indians have any problem with it? Even Indian weddings, I find it strange that in traditional Indian weddings, the gowns are taking over, not entirely, but yes, they're also making a dent instead of the Indian sari. So, what one finds is that while on the one hand, the aspirational middle class is increasingly adopting Western wear, and you find everywhere from get-togethers to social events. A lot of that is the preeminent trend. But on the other hand, really solid women, the corporate honchos, the women in the boardroom, they are still endorsing the sari. And sari is something which is heirloom, it is legacy, it is passed on from generation to generation. We have a history of traditional weaving, so many weaves, so many handlooms, and we are still embracing the jeans, which is really the I would say it's the streetwear of America. And when they tear it apart, we also tear it apart. So I mean, that sort of culture we are embracing. We need to be really mindful of our culture, the social setting in which we are going. And within this chapter, what's really written about is I've spoken to people like Ritu Kumar, who have dressed many a Miss India in ethnic attire, and she says that her favorite garment is a sari, and these are comfortable, soak in the sweat, and are great for a tropical climate. So anything which is culture compliant is also climate compliant, is also ecology compliant, global ecology also it kind of supports. I mean, just to export something which is not indigenous, which is not homegrown, it takes a toll on the transportation, the logistic cost. And imagine if you are spurring the handloom industry, doing it all locally, wearing local material. So, on that note, I'll also briefly talk about the departure from traditional style of making houses. So, all these glass gleamed facades of the so called Millennium City. I stay in Delhi, and the city next door, Gurgaon, as it was called earlier, and now Gurugram, has all glass gleamed facades. Now, these are energy guzzlers. These simply increase the carbon footprint. So anything which is not culture compliant, I mean, those Vastu techniques of broken matkas on the ceiling, which were acting as a de facto air conditioner, those were the techniques which need to come back. And we need to then be more appreciative uh, of the architectural techniques of the past, whether it was the way we dress up in the sari and the ethnic garment, the way we eat, what we eat, or how we stay, where we live in, the traditions. I think in every aspect of life, you, me, and all of us can just start, right now by making the right choices. Of course, people on this panel are another breed altogether, and I'm sure all erudite listeners also. But I think beyond that, if we can not wait for a lot of parents only grumble about and grudge about the education system, but then if they are bringing someone in their lives, then I think they owe it to themselves and to the society to raise people better than what they were, right? So the onus is a lot on the parents. The right kind of parenting will be extremely important to make sure that the traditional values get strengthened in our society and they don't start diminishing.
Yeah. I think
Arvind?
our audience can have allow us to have 15 minutes more. Okay, it's
Sure, sir,
already
sure.
okay. Go ahead, Arvind. Arvind is a
Yeah,
professor.
thank you. Thank you. I have two issues. First, I'll take the one which is related to culture and religion. In India, we say we have Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb. Ganga Jamuni culture is supposed to be a mix of Hindu and Islamic culture. In several cities and towns in India, we celebrate festivals which are common to Hindus and Muslims. For example, in Delhi, we have a famous annual festival called Fool Balon Ki Sair. And this Fool Balon Ki Sair has been maybe more than several decades now. And but this kind of Ganga Jamni culture, which we say on paper, is not reflected in reality in real life.
Yeah.
And as we see in our daily lives, there is tension between the two religious communities. Despite all this, saying that India has a Ganga Jamuni culture. So, what is your take on this Ganga Jamuni culture?
So I'm for one nation, one law, one set of values, one uniform code. Really, that is my stand, and I think we should be able to iron out those differences. In 1947, the Muslims who decided to be on this part of the country have agreed to, I think, the constitution being the be all and end all. And I think I really am looking forward to the uniform civil code. I'll reserve my comments on the Ganga Jamuna Tehzeeb because I feel that, let's do things which make the nation, not break the nation. Let's just be able, as Dr. Swamy said in his earlier opening remarks that we must do, we are one nation, and that is our identity. We are all one people, and that difference, delineation on in DNA, whether it's Aryan, Dravidian, and whether it's a religious division, is not something I'm not an authority on that, so I'll not be able to really say much on that. So unfortunately, yeah, that's all.
Oh,
What is
second is
what
also
is
related to culture. Jagdish, allow me to ask this question. We have a famous quote from an author, Pawan Kumar Burma, who is an ex-bureaucrat. He has written a book called The Great Middle Class. And they say
Okay.
India has a middle class culture. And when they say India has a middle class culture, actually it means India has a middle class value system. So, what is the difference between the culture and value system?
So maybe, I don't know, he has said it in a complimentary way or a derogatory way. So I think it's a middle class culture is a very positive culture. It's if we are looking at the bulk of India, and I think these are the people who matter. Maybe not the vote banks in the country, but I think otherwise they constitute the ethos, and they are the educated lot. So we definitely
they give you eighty
acquire.
percent of the savings of the country. The middle class is the one which provides the bulk of the savings. It's not the rich people who provide the bulk of the savings.
Exactly, they're the taxpayers. They're not the movers and shakers,
Savers,
but then the people
savers.
who, yeah,
Yes, yeah.
savers. Yeah, the people who are really adding value. So I myself, being from one, I would definitely vote for the middle class. And we may be little bit upper niche, like, oh, upper mid, lower middle class, whatever. But I think I really take pride in our roots. That if we have so the liberalization was the watershed moment, after which salaries have gone through the sky. But we have all come from families where there was one, wage earner, and everyone kind of having a minimalist kind of lifestyle. So this dil mange more, this maximalism which has come about, this is not Indian culture. I don't think, uh, this selling carbonated water with loads of sugar, nothing healthy about it, and they're selling it. That's really sad, because we are the land of bel sharbat, nimbu pani. Why are we not able to market it? And when I talk about branding and marketing, I feel
Kalakatha.
this is the time to actually sell up. For instance, International Yoga Day, all said and done, sir. 7 years back, when it was created as the cultural, as International Yoga Day, it wasn't that it wasn't yoga was not performed before that, or that yoga will not be performed henceforth. But I think globally it is the biggest cultural milestone which has been created, and it has spurred an entire enterprise. The merchandise which they end up selling is phenomenal. The uh, uh, the times when yoga gets performed in Times Square in New York, Indians in India wake up to the importance of yoga. So one problem with the middle class is that they think the idea of being aspirational is being anything non-Indian. So this somehow this indifference to one's own culture, and trying to look cooler and smarter and more in step with the times by embracing only other cultures and not your own, is where I have a problem. So that's why, and I, in my day-to-day interactions, when I see that these things are happening, I tell people, like, that's why I wrote the book Culture During Crisis. That's another example. So I'm sure all of you would have also similar experiences where you find that culture is in crisis. And it would be nice at some point to know uh, what your thoughts are on this. But
So,
I'll
there is
leave
a
it.
crisis of culture.
Sorry.
There is a crisis of culture.
Crisis in, yeah, crisis of culture, because also because our culture is multi-dimensional. It changes every few 100 kilometers. I mean, the language changes, the way we dress up, the way we eat, everything, the way we wear our jewelry, the way we worship, everything changes. So it's that's the beauty, but that's also the challenge of our particular culture.
This
Rameshji,
question actually originated from a viewer's question, and viewer was asking a question: how to define the culture. So I had on the back of my mind this definition that culture is actually a value system. So that's why I asked this question. Jagdish.
Arvind, Rameshji, your question?
Yeah, Mike, more than question, I mean, I kind of completely relate to what you just said, Namrata, because from my perspective, we support a school system started by the Kanchi Kamakodi Peetam. We call it a Sampradaya Padashala. And it's an integrated Padashala where we educate children into our culture and also give them a proper education. So, I mean, it is pretty interesting. And this is the same thing that was shared. I just quickly shared with you. This is what it is all about. So it talks about women educating girls. It says energetic as Durga, compassionate as Lakshmi, knowledgeable as Saraswati. So what they do is they kind of impart, because at the end of the day, as you said, the parents are too busy. They just don't, they say, okay, I don't have time. Both the parents are working. I just want to send them to school and let them do whatever they want. This is a change. You have to do it at a grassroots level. At some point in time, you still have to preserve. You can't just ignore this stuff. So these are the initiatives. And this initiative is supported in a big way from people like us in the US, because we have about 7 schools now, close to about maybe 4,000 students. So these, I mean, it started off with few. So it's growing. So at the end of the day, parents are looking at avenues. Maybe it's a good template for other regions in the country to start such integrated Pathshala, because they want a normal education. But when you insert or you kind of put the regular culture education, sampradaya, or I mean, we call it, I mean, when we say culture, is it Samskriti or is it Sampradaya? So we just call one of these things and insert that into their education. I think it is much more easier for people to observe. Kids are sponges. They will give you, they will take up anything that you give them. Right at the end of the day, you just put them at a very right age. You can't go and say, okay, 16-year-old, change your culture. That's not going to happen. You put that at the, I mean, at the grassroots level when they begin, they're not going to let go. I think that's what was missing all along. People just said, oh, Western style of education is the way to go. So obviously the kids have adopted to it. Now we have to start changing. You can't just impose it on them. It's not going to work. So we're starting at a ground level, saying, okay, at a kindergarten level, you start imbibing a little bit of culture and sampradaya. I think it is a better way to go. And I completely agree. There is a crisis in culture or sampradaya. It is growing faster in the US than in India. I can see that because there are competitions all over the world. I mean, all over the country. At the same, I mean, so I think it's a matter of time, and it is at a crisis, and at some point that we need to take alarming. And thank you for your service. And I think you are in the right place to bring all these changes about in the ministry. You're muted. So I'm sorry.
Very interesting work that you're doing, Mr. Ramesh Swamy. Very amazing work. And we need content creators like you know, whether it's in the field of education to make that powerful impact in the society. And I would like to also share that in our own different ways we can create that impact in our professional through our professions. So for instance, the way Rajamouli has created Bahubali, or Nilesh Mishra has turned the tide in primetime radio with storytelling, or Amish Tripathi has made Shiva trilogy a blockbuster. So these are all ways we need good content creators, and the minute we have content creators of a high quality, I think there are going to be takers. Like you said, Ramesh, just now about parents warming up to this interesting idea of education, children accepting it. These are really, it's really then about creating choices for the people, and people are very intelligent. They will lap it up. It's not that our children are going wild. It's just that certain things are not exciting them enough. Maybe we are not able to present it in a way which is accessible, which is understandable. There, maybe it's in a box, and it's there are too many jargons, and nobody is telling the stories around it. So, for instance, I remember in a interaction with Durga Jasraj when she was setting up the Pandit Jasraj Cultural Foundation early in the year. She told me that newspapers talk about this the cows in Denmark producing more milk, but then why can't our media people talk about कृष्ण बांसुरी बजाते थे, वहां से ये पूरा शुरुआत ही वहां से हुई है. So these kind of nuances get to be captured, and someone talking about them in our education curriculum, or parents talking to the children about it. These are all going to be very valuable inputs towards strengthening our culture.
And content-wise, I don't think India lacks content in terms of we have enough stories, enough, we have our Puranas, we have our, our Shruti, Smriti, and Puranam. So we have, so, all the three gives you enough content. You just have to be creative enough to take that and put it out in perspective. You don't need to go, oh my God, bravery. You don't want to talk about a Western bravery thing. You have enough people in our culture also. We talk about education, bravery. You talk anything about it. I think we have enough stories that you can create content about.
Jagdish, I think,
Very
yeah,
true.
We
Every
can
village
close.
in India, every district.
Arvind, yeah.
Yeah.
Arvind,
Sorry.
before you Arvind, it's
Yeah,
time for you to wind up. But before Arvind wind up, I just want to share an anecdote. In the mid 90s, one day Arvind Chaturvedi, myself, and some others were in Delhi discussing something, and we came across this word sanskar, Hindi word
Right.
or Sanskrit word sanskar. So Arvind and myself were debating what is the English equivalent of sanskar. So we could not arrive at any
I don't think there's
conclusion.
one.
No, we could not arrive at any conclusion. Then Arvind had a bright idea. I think a number was 174, which was MTNL number, which used to help people give you the equivalent of some word, either English into Hindi or Hindi into English. So I rang up that number, and that lady was struggling to find the Hindi equivalent of sanskar. Ultimately, she couldn't give us the correct answer, and by a slip of tongue, she said, "अंग्रेजों में संस्कार नहीं होते." What she meant was,
yeah.
अंग्रेजी में संस्कार नहीं होते, अंग्रेजों में संस्कार नहीं होते. So with this anecdote, we are ending this program. Over to Arvind Chaturvedi.
And Namrata, you had one last point before she had something else to say. Yeah, you finish that and then Arvind can take over. I think Arvind is frozen, but you can go ahead. Jagdish,
Yeah,
you can conclude.
I was just extending the thought which you mentioned, that there's no dearth of stories in India. I feel every village, every district, every city, every town is so rich with stories. And whether it is in visual art, performing
Folklore.
art, literary
A
art,
folklore story.
folklore, mythology. I mean, these are all, and unfortunately, because of the breakdown of the joint family system, and recently I was the guest of honor at Daji's book Wisdom Bridges, which is all about, which talks about how these grandparents are the bridges of generational wisdom to the next generation, and with nannies taking over nannies and that kind of changing the erosion of the cultural values, those stories are also going, and they're just being fed on Harry Potter and animes.
Yeah, I was just
So
just about to mention saying that folklore, this super duper hit of Kantara. It's just a folklore story, but people really want this kind of content. So
they want,
there's somebody just talked about it. I was just about to mention when you said folklore stories. I just wanted to say as to why people are looking for such content. I mean, they love
yeah,
this content, and okay. Jagdish, you conclude. I think Arvind is cutting in and out.
yeah.
Ma'am, if you're finished, I'll then conclude.
I'm done, sir. I'm done. Thank you.
Unfortunately, Arvind is getting disconnected. Thank you, viewers, and thank you, Madam Namrata Kohli ji and Dr. Subramaniam Swamy, for this interesting discussion on the book written by Namrata Kohli, Culture During Crisis, and it is published by Notion Press. And our viewers can always go to Flipkart or Amazon to get this book. It is available online. You can order it online. I thank my co-host Ramesh Swamy and Arvind Chaturvedi for participating in the program, and our technical team for all their background support for putting this program together. We will be back next week at the same time for another interesting discussion on some topical issues. Till then, goodbye and thank you for watching our program Words of Wisdom Gyan Ganga on every every Sunday at 8 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Thank you and Dhanyavad. Jai Hind.